Hello, folks, and that's bugging me. Let's just find a good spot to read war. Down here seems good. Story time with Palanai. So, it's in here. Stone intelligence. Outliers. Access restricted to decryption key. Agent RAN 187. Subject counter-cultural intelligence update. 1. Fallen armed forces continue to fall back from active fronts across Terra. Factions of fallen armed forces continue to fall back from active fronts across Terra. Factions of House Dusk remain active in the European Dead Zone. Throughout the rest of the globe, refugee attack incidents have dropped by more than 70% since the conclusion of Red War, largely attributable to depressed fallen and human populations rather than any significant change in interspecies relations. 2. In absence of any unified leadership, House Dusk continues to splinter and radicalize. The recent trending emergence of so-called crime syndicates, CF Report 004-Fallen-SIV, is emblematic of continuing destructuralization of fallen society, likely an artifact of multi-generational colonization of human strongholds. This agent believes that because these syndicates have no relation to indigenous fallen culture, young fallen are appropriating and imitating human mythology in absence of strong cultural heritage of their own. Much like the dissolution of Kel Archon theology, this is positive news for those interested in the complete expatriation of invasive fallen from the system. That being said, we should continue to monitor reunification efforts. Several personalities emerged as potential leaders. The first will be integrationalists VP 1121, well known to the Guardians of the Inner System as Varix, or Varix the Loyal, directly responsible for the release of the murderer Aldrin Solve from the Prison of Elders. 1121 subsequently fled Awoken Holdings in the Reef, and now styles himself the Kel of Kells, still representing House Judgment. The Praxic Order has petitioned the Vanguard for permission to detain 1121. The Awoken Monarchy, acting through the Queen's wrath, has claimed jurisdiction over 1121, that any prosecution in absence of their involvement will be considered an act of war. Vanguard has not yet made a statement about their position on the issue. The VIP 3987, another former Confederate of the Awoken, is a lesser-known personality known as Mithrax. Scattered field reports suggest that, like 1121, 3987 styles himself a Kel of the so-called House Light, an otherwise unknown house apparently founded by 3987 himself, with second-hand accounts that Mithrax has engaged in allied operations with Guardians in the field, but we have not yet been able to corroborate these accounts with any degree of veracity. This agent is inclined to treat these reports with a healthy degree of skepticism until otherwise informed, as it may be propaganda for fallen sympathizers in the old Russian and Red War Guardian cohorts. We have requested intelligence records from the Awoken, which may further clarify the matter. In addition, whatever the findings of said intelligence records may be, it should be stressed that one or two sympathetic outliers cannot be relied upon to erase the past wrongs of past centuries, nor should their good faith efforts to correct the sins of their forebears be taken as sufficient symbolic reparation. The second will be separatists. VIP 4503, a recent personality known as Fikrud, or the Fanatic, a close confederate of the murderer Aldrin Sov. 4503 has the apparent ability to raise himself from the dead in a matter not dissimilar to ghost-aided resurrection. Though his reign on the Tangled Shore was limited, he possessed sufficient skill, hatred, and motive to warrant ongoing surveillance. Given 4503's propensity for resurrection, the inherent risk of 4503 reclaiming the body of the murderer Aldrin Solve from its final resting place in the Dreaming City goes without saying. The Vanguard continues to supply fire teams to suppress 4503. Our agents have reached out to the Cryptarchy and the Jinsim scribes to request aid as to its permanent destruction. VP 2029, a once known personality known as Aramis or Aramis the Ship Stealer, a House Devil's Baroness incarcerated during the Wolf Wars. 2029 successfully fled the prison of elders during the mass escape orchestrated by 1121. 2029 is a classical fallen pirate of the old ways, vicious, uncompromising, and possessing the cunning of the highest degree. Full reports indicate that she's rallying violent dissidents to reconstruct House Devils from the ground up. This agent believes her to be the most viable candidate for universal fallen reunification, and would urge the Vanguard and other interested leadership to aggressively prioritize her destruction. We've come too far to pull our punches now. Instability. City Van. Agent IKO 006. Instability of leadership. Following the events of the Red War and recent loss of the Hunter Vanguard, current acting Vanguard leadership has struggled to define its function and role within what is an otherwise largely egalitarian and self-governing body of active guardians. Much like the current popular perception of the Awoken Queen, we failed to adequately respond to the questions about her integrity, competence, and unity, as we have grieved the loss of the Hunter Vanguard. The Vanguard was never intended to function as a governing body of authoritarians, nor does it function as such, but in times of turmoil and uncertainty, people rightly look to figures of strength for guidance and support. Neither the Titan Vanguard nor I intended to become politicians. Oh, it's the other one. Yes. I can't remember her name. Ikora. So who was this one? Ran. I have no idea. We are warriors first and foremost, and we no longer feel that we are able to serve as such. In the spirit of honest self-reflection and in the face of justified skepticism, we've begun to discuss the possibility of stepping down to invite new leadership in our place, as well as general merits of disbanding the Vanguard entirely, largely because we believe that this crisis of identity will plague anyone who steps into this role. We recognize that this is ill-timed and will endeavour to involve consensus, the Guardians themselves, and all other interested parties in discussion as appropriate. I specifically invite the Hidden to closely monitor the situation without my involvement. Should you agree that we're doing more harm than good, please do not hesitate to take whatever actions you agree are necessary. Execute them! Regarding the open Hunter Vanguard position, in the terms of Cade's dare, the situation is unprecedented. Were we able to chase the chain of culpability back to its first link, I believe we'll be obligated to elect a hive god to our council. Is that to say that Cade's dare is whoever killed is responsible for his death takes his position or something? You know, because that would be funny, having a hive god suddenly, you know, ruling the city and actually, like, you know, actually trying to actually do a good job about it. You know, giant worm thing, you know, actually reading letters and doing bureaucracy. Trying to move a pen with its giant maw. Be hysterical. Our current inclination is to caucus the hunters to debate the benefits of opening the position to any interested and well-qualified hunter. Such a debate is, of course, contingent upon the continued existence of the Vanguard itself. We'll make an effort to convene the hunters as soon as possible, but this group should be well aware that most credible candidates have fled the tower in anticipation of such debate. Coctus? True 135. Sensitive contents below sniffed from encrypted reef datacoms. Sensitive. Wish I knew who the hell these were. We are maintaining our containment position at Coctus. I assess no immediate danger to the system, and we have enough firepower to destroy the station and its mechanisms remotely if on-site warheads fail. The station remains in stable heliocentric orbit, where it is parked after destruction of Ceres. I do not ask confirmation of these theories, and in fact I beg you not to address them, but I've reviewed the site records, and the fate of Sophia's crew after they were herded to Coctus stinks of hive madness. The coccyx apertures must, at the time, have opened into a hive manifold associated with Crota. Whatever their original purpose, when Crota established his presence in the system, they became conduits into hell, and Sophia's crew's ugly end proved it. Whoever drove Sophia to its doom then installed the Coctus instruments around the original Golden Age facility to study Crocta's manifold. 3. Crocta is dead. His hold on the gates has passed, though something else is trying to pass through into our world, but it is so alien and its sending so bafflingly malformed that I fear this can only end in madness. The first visitors through the gate at event time midnight were simple hydrogen atoms. Over the course of 72 hours, the emissions developed from diatomic hydrogen to nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, water, and simple organic molecules. At the 88-hour mark, we received our first macroscopic visitor, a pellet of thick black hypercarbon tar. Until 82:34:15, the gate vomited tar containing increasingly more complex monomers and polymers. The visitors then began to assume geometric form, a hill of cubes and hexagons, each built from molecular crystal of the same form as the whole. A series of fractal shapes that shattered under internal falls. Several capsules or membranes of increasingly complex structure containing water or oil. These may have been cellular precursors. 524:03:11, living organism appeared. Death was immediate. A remote dissection describes a spherical body, radius approximately 1 meter, surfaced in thick hydrocarbon tar. Deeply even spaced throats converged on a central cavity, perhaps intended to serve as lung and stomach. Terrible mixture. The body exhibited undifferentiated tissue of primitive plant-like cells, capable of spasming to pump air or food in and out of throats. Without enzymes to catalyze metabolism or internal structure to dispose of waste, the organism could not survive. So that occurred almost instantaneously throughout the mass. There's no provisions for self-repair or reproduction. At 690:29:54, the gate emitted a tubular organism. For 90 seconds, the organism moved across the gate chamber by contracting and expanding, then expired. Remote dissection describes a 2-meter-long body with a spinal cavity full of energy-rich hydrocarbonate fluid. The organism's contractions forces food through a capillary network where simple cells catabolized the carbohydrates into energy to power further contractions. The buildup of heat and waste quickly denatured the enzymes required to metabolize, for metabolism, and the organism died. There are no provisions for self-repair or reproduction. The gate has remained inactive since, barring short emissions of molecules which may be experimental proteins. Remote drones have registered similar ambient molecules within the Hellmouth and Luna, though we have been unable to identify their source. We'll maintain the quarantine until otherwise instructed. The overwhelming impression I have is one of learning, of increasing sophistication in synthesis and arrangement of matter. The atoms in these structures were isotopically pure and impossible to date, but of the uncomfortable sense that even they were freshly made. Probes and instruments dispatched through the third gate do not return. Annihilation is apparently immediate, and so the total that is to result from total that is to result from a fundamental failure of the ability to exist, rather than any weapon or countermeasure. Yet something does exist on the far side, and it is trying to learn the rules of our world from very first principles. I do not eagerly await its next creation. Yeah, that's what I was thinking before. That there's the idea of the multiverse. There's the evidence of a multiverse, and some people throw out the idea that there's a limited one. Apparently, Stephen Hawking claimed that there's only evidence for a limited number of them. While others throw out the idea that there's infinite, with infinite possibility. The more there are with greater range to them, the more this could be accurate. As in, they just be life, or even mechanical beings from here can't exist over there. You bring your phone across, you're fine, the phone just disintegrates, just ceases to be. You go across, you die, but your phone fine, or both, just go. And then obviously, like I was saying, with infinite possibility, going for the more extreme side, infinite possibility with infinite potential, you go across, your phone explodes, and you may mutate into a multiverse-ending horror with like portals into the other multiverse, other dimensions in your flesh, and yeah, it's all horrific. Bullet to the brain does not solve it. Uh, so yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, theoretically, that this isn't actually completely sci-fi. There is meant to be a multiverse, and depending on like if they're separate to ours, operate under their own sense of physics, then we could say if we can open a rift to go there, we could just disintegrate the moment we go there, or worse, just cease to be completely. Not even leave ash and the like. Um, Not even leave ash or the like, or even worse. You wouldn't fucking know. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought, so I just kind of filled it in with random lines, hoping they worked. But yeah, basically, there's meant to be a multiverse, and this could theoretically happen, depending on the rules of our multiverse as a whole. Like, there's one idea that we have a multiverse, but they're all based off ours, say the path not taken, so on and so forth. While there's another idea where there's sister dimensions where their own shit's going on, you know? And, if it's that, and if are allowed great enough variety, this could happen. You could also say, stumble into the Destiny universe. Stumble into fucking Star Trek. Wow, depends on the length of variety and the amount there is. So, yeah. Latest Shim Izu paper. Everybody's favorite conspiracy theorist is publishing again. Here's an excerpt from his latest paper. Incomplete, I'm afraid, but you can try for high def OCR at 500M during a rainstorm and tell me how you do. Remain major unanswered questions about the failure of the city's information, surveillance and reconnaissance network to detect the approaching Red Legion fleet. It's by now well accepted that the Red Legion's sophistication in military affairs vastly exceeded our own. Though Gaul's campaign made no real provision for continued resistance after the Traveller was contained, and the Almighty moved into firing position, Zubin and Gambit achieved a level of strategic surprise that would be the envy of any ancient general. Scion electronic warfare units compromised the city's sensor perimeters and suppressed their satellite early warning systems so thoroughly that they maintained their failsafe signals until the last possible moment. An extraordinary deception program in the prison of elders, combined with relativistic projectile strikes against key sensors, blinded the reef to a simultaneous attack. But how did Red Legion escape the notice of the entire scattered dead orbit fleet? It would be politically unwise to suggest that the Arax would hold information so their precious ships would be spared losing battle. And indeed, the integrity of that same fleet proved invaluable in the counterattack in the city's reconstruction. It would be even more politically incendiary to suggest that the future war cult viewed the city's brief occupation as politically useful or more charitably a necessary step towards some desirable future timeline. But it is impossible not to ask, how did the same guardians who foresaw Oryx in prophecy and in captured enemy material fail to anticipate and take measures against the Red Legion attack? Is there something intrinsically more secular and therefore unseeable about the Cabal? Do they practice superior information security to the Hive, unlikely given the interception of Cabal's distress signal in the wake of the Taken War? Did some agency henceforth unknown act to conceal Gaul's approach from our protectors, one that shared with Gaul some central motive, whether destruction of the Guardians, capture of the Traveller, or the apprehension by forces of the ability we call the Light? If such an agency exists, capable of such totality and subtlety in its action, how has it concealed itself from us? If I didn't know better, I would say we had a leak. Hassan's a real ringer. I hope he gets rezzed as one of us when he dies. With all the usual regret, I'm going to forward a recommendation to the Cryptarchs, continuing rejecting his submissions from legitimate publications. If anyone disagrees, just give a shout. Alright. Don't know the full context of that. Like, who's this conspiracy theorist and all that. It's not the first one I read of it. As you all know, an unknown sender delivered 6 messages to VP 2014. These missives were sent via Glimmer using a simple encryption scheme that even a 5530 unit frame could have easily cracked. 2014's Ghost took immediate notice of these messages and quietly forwarded them on to Ikora, who then distributed them back to us. Reports Vesta DC for full transcripts. In these messages, the sender briefly purports to be none other than one IRE 223, providing fanciful details regarding her origins as in a woman who grew up in the apparent settlement of Old Russia known as St. Petersburg. None of this account sounds well with anyone who actually knows IRE 223, simply because none of her close confederates had any first knowledge or belief that she knew of her not simply because none of her close confederates had any first-hand knowledge or belief that she knew of her pre-Guardian origins, but also because she's still active in the field and has personally denied sending these messages. That being said, in accordance with her rigor of skeptical inquiry, this agent was dispatched in pursuit of hard evidence to the contrary. I submit to you now photographic and video evidence recovered from civilian family albums, historical archives, and extant ghost recordings originally captured in Lost City. Behold, ERI 223, a child of the Lost City, born to civilian parents in a mortal Guardian integrated neighborhood. Behold 2, tiny VIP 1786, though he is almost more unbelievable than ERI 223 if you look at the smile. Of the photos, original data files are unavailable, but radiocarbon dating clearly identifies the earliest prints as more than 300 years old. This is consistent with the timestamps of footage provided by volunteer ghosts who were present during the same period. As to whether the child we believe to be ERI-223 is indeed ERI-223, please see the second compressed folder attached to this report for full double-blind forensics. In regards to the other personality presented in 6 messages, having consulted with AICOM/RSPN and AICOM-RBLK, XBLK, both have attested that there is no record of any so-called craft mine designated Medusa. This does not discount the possibility that such a craft mine may have existed, but in light of the fact that someone was impersonating our former colleague, it shows that someone may have credibly invented a craft mine as well. We'll continue to scour records as to for any evidence to the contrary. Like many of those reading, this agent has strong recommendation about the identity of the sender, but it is beyond the scope of this report. And then suggests cites a ton of other reports. Given the importance of 2014's contributions to our defense efforts, as well as the recent downfall of the Awoken Prince, the agent is deeply troubled by the idea that a malicious entity may seek to sway or confuse 2014 through the context of trusted allies. 2014's ghost made brief mention of some kind of waking hallucination in one of his messages. Have we reached out to corroborate that report or provide additional counsel? Passivity. 135. Fire training exercises can continue at the incursion site on Leviathan. No further raid class operatives have been documented since the unauthorized intervention against VIP 4044 at the explicit invitation of VIP 3801. This agent still believes that the Vanguard should institute stronger measures to prevent rogue teams from carelessly rushing to the aid of enemy VIPs, particularly given 3801's documented history of solicitous behavior and tendency of our warriors to run slack-jawed towards free gifts. 4044 could have been a useful catapult in the destruction of 3801. We should not have intervened. Related to the above, 3801's aggressive propaganda campaigns appear to have been successful. By 3801's recent inactivity, sentiment polls captured at the tower at recent irregular intervals over the last several months indicated he successfully swayed a significant percentage of the Red War cohort to believe that he may be a potential ally. Given our history with the Cabal as well as the events of the Red War itself, this is shocking and perhaps a case of mass traumatic bonding. It's my strong recommendation that Vanguard pursue re-education curriculum before 3801 invites any guardians at City to defect to his service, a possibility which we've documented in multiple previous reports. Nessus continues to remain stable, likely due to Vex machinoforming. 4. The Awoken Armada continues regular shows of force, Leviathan remains non-hostile. Our agents continue to closely monitor inbound and outbound traffic to and from the Leviathan. As yet, we have not been able to observe any non-Guardian transport, providing additional evidence for the fact that the ship is either a self-contained ecosystem which has no paracausal exits, or that it possesses some kind of internal Stargate network by which occupants may invisibly enter and exit. As the Cabal has no documented history of such Stargates, we're inclined to believe the former. In summary, there is no real news. However, this agent is inclined to regard this suspicious passivity with suspicion rather than relief. Would urge Vanguard leadership to consider exploratory incursions in the coming months. Last week, I was deployed by IKO 006 for a routine surveillance of the quarantine zone outside of the Helmut. Hive populations remain low and grow ever lower thanks to the efforts of a small contingent of veteran guardians who made their homes on Luna. Around 1900 hours yesterday afternoon, I began to experience a crushing headache and excused myself from patrol to recuperate. Though I initially intended to lay down for a nap, I fell asleep instead and experienced multiple vivid dreams over the next 11.5 hours. In all of these dreams, I was trying to catch up with Agent IRE-223 in a crowd. She was always out of reach, whether by 200 meters or 20. I had the sense that I needed to speak to her. When I awoke, I found that my headache had not improved. Per my armor and exited my biovac. That's off, but whatever. To find a single solitary troll crouched nearby. It stood as I approached, but made no motion to attack me. Fired one shot, killing it immediately. Stepping forward to examine its corpse, I saw a solid black fragment of unknown material embedded in its chest cavity. The fragment resembled a flake or a shard of some larger object, not dissimilar to a high-gain photovoltaic panel. Requested my ghost perform a standard material analysis of the fragment, but neither one of us could confidently ID its properties or provenance. That analysis is attached to its report as Analysis 1. Requested my ghost attempt to contain and transmat the fragment for quarantine on my jump ship. He was unable to establish a light link with the object, describing the fragment as slippery and tiring to try to catch hold of. I used the barrel of my sniper rifle to touch, then worked its fragment out of the troll's corpse. Using my rifle, I turned the fragment over and examined it from multiple angles. Of course, my ghost ran another deep scan of the object. It's attached to its analysis too. The concluded materials seemed to be inert, and this seemed to be part of any complex device or mechanism. At this point, I broke protocol, didn't request additional backup. Instead, I picked up the fragment by hand and immediately experienced a vivid hallucination. I stood over VIP 0704's shoulder as she dressed a 7-inch gash on Agent Irie 223's thigh, as both 0704 and Irie 223 were dressed for combat. Hundreds of fragments of unknown material hung in the air around us, apparent shrapnel from the wreckage of a nearby ship. Unrecognizable make and model. Irie looked directly towards me and said, "Russian." The duration of the hallucination was approximately 7 seconds. At its conclusion, my headache disappeared. My ghost and I held our position for the next 30 minutes, then collected the body of the troll and the fragment for transportation. Delivered myself and my cargo to quarantine, but I had experienced no further mental disturbances while detained. Could have left the fragment in the troll and then just moved the troll. Lease. ICO 006 lease space in the Annex. After several months of negotiation, the Vanguard has agreed to allow VIP 1315 to formally lease an unused warehouse space in the Annex's new tower. To be clear, this was the Vanguard's proposal, not his. The despite the many skeptics who have good questions about the social risk inherent in providing 1315 more legitimate space, we feel that any disruption in morale to our culture will be short-term and minimal. Likewise, we feel that he does not present a present danger to Tower City inhabitants. We continue to work alongside Lord Shax to assess the long-term strategic value of 1315's gambit. I recognise that this decision will be unpopular with certain agents who have taken upon themselves to investigate 1315's history and moral character. Please remember that I sidelined myself from active duty in order to personally surveil his activities in Tower, that I kept guard outside his former place of business since his arrival. It is my belief that his presence will do more good than ill, and the Tower has long stunted its own growth through narrow-minded fear and reactive exile of dissidents. We should endeavour to remain sharp skeptics of philosophies which differ from our own, but we should always be willing to hear and consider these philosophies. Further, any concerned members of the Praxic Order should recall that the Vanguard holds jurisdiction over their actions, that exile of dissident philosophers is very different from the exile of rogue operators. So it's still throwing around exile. It's just, well, you know, this guy to murder people, but you can't crack down on him. How charming. Psycho Val. Devices at it's Drifter's place. He is 1315. Yep. Home 2. In previous reports, this as obtained for surveillance devices at 1315 Home 2. Previous reports have stated it's my belief that 1315 had invoked some kind of paracausal event, enabling resurrection and return of enemy VIP 2015. This belief was predicated upon reports of creatures resembling the infamous echoes of Oryx that the Guardian forces engaged and destroyed en masse during the Taken War. Cathedral of Dusk Dreadnought. This has proven false. Spectral analysis from multiple ghosts participating undercover in Prime and Reckoning confirms that the impossible world at the heart of the hall is located in unknown space. Further, these primals differ from their literal elemental composition: low SNC, high ambient ACDM. 1315 has harnessed his banks to what appears to be an engine of pure potential. No longer needs to pilfer the ascended plane of primevals, the oldest taken in residence. He can create primeval likes from the energy of the hall and sheer force of will. As to the apparent presence of 2015, it is a falsehood. My handlers in Praxic Orders merely simply, the shape of Oryx was the scariest hive you could think of. He's tenacious, but he has a small mind. Highly recommend we assess 1315 for the influence of paracausal events or entities. Since the conclusion of the joint Vanguard Praxic investigation into his operations, the subject has grown increasingly erratic. But in his running of Gambit and Reckoning drills with Guardian population, he's done nothing but hole up in the annex. He's always exhibited signs of stress related to the prolonged solitude that are typical of all surviving Risen. This manifests in the subject in prolonged and rambling conversations with either himself or as yet unseen ghost. However, his musings become less and less coherent over time. Late into the night, away from the Guardian cohorts, yells of voices our surveillance equipment has never picked up. He has spoken to himself about trips across vast and slow distances, to realms no Guardians ever described. Again, he's not left his annex in ages. One might say I'm overstepping even Praxic boundaries here, but I would say to them, subjects free to leave at any time. And then you would bug his new home. Yeah. Following the results of my investigation, subject has ceased regular reports to Lord Shax. I'm sure both prefer it that way. 1315 has broken none of Vanguard's decrees in that time, nor have any further Guardians perished on his watch in Gambit or Reckoning. Still a facilitator to murder and a thief, but he's done nothing to warrant eviction, as I had hoped. The Vanguard still obviously needs him. The following is a transcript of one of his late night ramblings logged for evidence. Just Drifter. What now? What the hell is it you're trying to tell me? The hum of a generator. You show me a universe with no light, dominated by the dark. What are you arguing? Steadfastness in the Traveler's dogma? That's not obtuse enough for y'all. No, I don't think so. Because then you show me a reality without shadows, pure light from every angle, nowhere to hide, everyone begging to die like we did in the Dark Age. Why, it's no gift, but I already knew that. What else you got? A metallic clink echoes. Yeah, I know the coin doesn't lie. It's the only thing in this world I trust for real, but you know what? I control the coin, and I make my own fate. No one writes on this but me. You got that? Pencil-necked phantom-ass geeks. Have some respect for people's stuff. A second metallic clunk. I've rejected travel's dogma for generations, and I'll reject yours. A rush of static as the feed distorts from light-based radiation. You can't boil my brain, brothers and sisters. I see you trying. I'm already there. And if you think you can and if you think you have a handle on Orin, well, you didn't know or I'll guide it. You slip up just once, that girl will eat you alive. 9 steaks sounds mighty tasty if you can find it. Scrape it all together. Get a fire going, that'll cook it. What a fire that will be. You want to see what makes us think? Maybe Drifter wants to see what makes you stop. They'll roar as feed distorts from light-based radiation. Oh, yeah, boy, that's a threat. Hello? No, not you. I still need you. This week. Get back to work. What? Nothing. Still hungry. Drifter's losing it. And he's obviously talking to the 9. But, I don't know who Orin is, so maybe she has something to do with the host club. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, I have one. I think I've completed another. Yes, I have completed another one. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one. I'll stop this recording, to make these separate, and I'll go read this now. Hope you've enjoyed.